Generation Restoration. That's the key message of this year's United Nations World Environment Day, encouraging individuals and organizations to focus on restoring the land and build drought resilience. According to the UN, the number of droughts and their duration have increased by 29% since the year 2000. The UN has also found that up to 40% of the planet's land is degraded, directly affecting half of the world's population. But that could grow to three-quarters by 2050 if urgent action is not taken. This year, the BC government has warned of a catastrophic wildfire season, citing low snowpack levels and extremely dry conditions. This follows a record-breaking 2023 wildfire season, which saw over 16.5 million hectares of land burned, the most destructive wildfire season in Canada's history. That same year, 80% of the province experienced severe drought. Now, experts are warning of what's ahead, with over 36% of BC currently at drought level 3 or above, affecting livestock and drying up rivers, just some of the far-reaching impacts of a hotter and drier climate. Here to help us unpack drought and the changing climate is John Clegg, professor of earth sciences with SFU. John, could you start by telling us how drought impacts the land and specifically how drought conditions contribute to the wildfires?
Drought is a condition where we have prolonged warmer and drier conditions that basically dry out the land. We're most familiar with drought in kind of semi-arid and arid environments, but you can have it in temperate environments like much of Canada as well. If you just basically have a very long period when we have no rain, temperatures are above average, it tends to dry out the soil, dries out agricultural lands, and creates a condition that definitely poses problems for not only the agricultural industry, but also in terms of our forests, because our forests get parched as well, and that's a setup for wildfires.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say global warming is contributing to some of those severe drought that some communities in BC is seeing right now?
We've seen over the past, well, quite some time now, I would say decade or so, that we have had drier summers. We've had summers that happen earlier. You know, even in Vancouver, we noticed that kind of the ski season is over earlier than it used to be, and we get typically in Vancouver, all through BC, what you might call very pleasant temperatures, little rain, extending right through the fall. So that summer season, what you might call that time when the soils dry out, the forests dry out, is prolonged. And that leads to a condition where you have the forest primed for ignition. And we've seen that as a consequence, I think, of the changes in atmospheric circulation that are taking place as our climate has changed. Not only has the atmosphere reacted in a bit of an unpredictable way, but it is also a warmer atmosphere. So temperatures being overall higher throughout the year, that leads to drier vegetation and a larger likelihood that you're going to have serious wildfires during this wildfire season. The wildfire season, actually, we've noticed, is getting longer and longer and longer. You know, it used to be, you could say, well, maybe May through the end of August. Now, you know, we get wildfires almost year-round, and we get serious wildfires fairly early in April and even right into October.
Yeah. We're seeing wildfire season starting earlier as well. You know, already Fort Nelson evacuees, they had to come. Would you say this new extreme wildfire season is going to become our new normal?
You know, that's kind of the catchphrase these days is new normal, but with climate change, there is no new normal. You know, it's a progression to a different state, and we are kind of in the midst of that. We're in the early stages of seeing our atmosphere align to higher levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So it's a bit difficult to say what that particular state is going to be at any time in the future, but it isn't probably going to be very positive. It's going to be a warmer atmosphere, more extremes in climate. We see those now reported almost on a weekly basis, where we get atmospheric events, weather events that are kind of off scale, that people have never seen in their lives before, right around the world. It's not just in BC with our atmospheric river event and our heat dome event. Right now, the western U.S. is experiencing a big heat dome event. So these are the type of things that are going to happen more frequently in the future. I would say not every day, but it's just they're going to become more common. And it's a little hard, even with kind of what we know as scientifically is going on, as to how that's going to play out in detail. We'll see times when it's what we might call old normal, and we're going to see times when the weather is definitely off scale, extreme, and I think the latter are going to become more common in the future, which is a very, very damaging and kind of risky scenario that we're walking into.
Right. What would you say are some of the steps we can take to kind of mitigate the impacts of severe drought and global warming?
We can't easily mitigate global warming without actually reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And I think kind of we are going to have that continuing. We're not going to be off fossil fuels as much as we'd like to in the immediate future. We're kind of turning the ship around, but that's going to take a lot of time. So in my opinion, we have to be looking at how we can cope with those extreme events better. And drought being an example, one thing we can do is rationalize our use of water better. We've got to stop seeing water as something, that doesn't cost anything. Water is our most precious resource, and we need to price it just as we're beginning to think of pricing carbon dioxide as a pollutant. And I think things like metering water ought to be almost mandatory in any community. I know that's not going to be popular with people, but nonetheless, I think we need to rationalize our use of water so that we have enough to go around in periods of drought. And I think we all, probably myself included, waste a lot of water. Well, we can't have that under, conditions where drought is a problem. We need to basically treat it as a very precious commodity and not waste it at all. So there's a lot of things that can be done to conserve more water than we are. This sounds kind of strange in a country that has more fresh water than any other country in the world. You'd think that wouldn't be a problem, but it's a problem in our large megapolises, the places where we have most of our population concentrated.
Yeah, for sure. The UN's message this World Environment Day focuses on restoring the land. Are there any restorative measures we can take as individuals, particularly when it comes to land affected by wildfires?
I think we have to be more careful about how we use soils and the land surface. I'm a big believer in viewing the land with respect. And I know that's a very general thing to say, but I think we treat land very poorly. We treat our soils very poorly. We treat our forests very poorly. We have industrial scale logging that has devastated our forests, and that's disrupted ecosystems, disrupted the soil system, which sustains life at a very lower level. We've just got to develop a larger respect for that. I think Indigenous people have that inherent respect for the land, so we have to better adopt their kind of attitudes towards how we treat the land around us. And I think that would go a long ways to, if we had that view collectively, that would go a long ways to ensuring that we don't degrade the environment in which we live.
Mm-hmm. We saw a record-breaking wildfire season in 2023. How bad do you think it will get this time around?
Well, I'm always terrible at forecasts, but You know, it's starting out really bad. We had the unusually early, very bad wildfires up at Fort Nelson, and I was pretty convinced that this was the start of a terrible summer. But things have calmed down a bit. We've got more precipitation. As we know, in Vancouver, we've experienced a few deluges, but we are not yet into summer. You know, we've got a couple of weeks to go before our summer officially starts. So the forecasts are for a pretty normal summer precipitation-wise in BC, but I think it's too early to be sure. You know, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. We are heading later in the week into much warmer conditions and no rain over a period of about 10 days. So things can change, and if they kind of set in a static way like you get during a heat dome, then we could be in big trouble again. You know, our forests are still dry, even though we've had this period of moisture. They're still dry. We still are kind of in Western Canada in a drought state.
Okay. And just on a more hopeful note, what message would you like to share this World Environment Day? Well, I do see positive changes, attitudinal changes. You know, there's kind of, we're in a period of transition, and I guess my positive view would be let's do it faster, and let's kind of try and wean ourselves out of fossil fuels and have this respect for the land that I mentioned, and we'll leave a better world for the next generations. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. Thank you, Cecilia. That was John Clegg, Professor of Earth Science with SFU, on the ongoing impacts of drought in the province. One area in BC experiencing high levels of drought is Dawson Creek, with the East Peace region seeing drought level 5, the highest on BC's 5-point scale, impacting farmers and their livelihoods in the area. Local farmer and owner of Ravenwood Farm, Bill Smith, joins me now via Skype. Bill, let's get straight into it. Tell us about the drought conditions in Dawson Creek right now and how it's been impacting the area.
The area in total is in a level 5 drought, which is most serious, and has been for the last couple of years. So the impacts are quite severe, not just in agriculture, but anybody who needs water, including the city of Dawson.
And as a farmer yourself, how have the drought conditions impacted you personally?
Well, with no moisture, no runoff for 2 years, water is a serious issue. We've run out of water up on range. I'm pumping water today to cattle up on range, and pumping water at home to move water from one dugout to another. And it also means no hay crops and right now no pasture. So I was speaking this morning with a producer in central Alberta who has rain. I may have to move my cattle 600 miles right away, actually, within 2 or 3 weeks.
How would you say climate change and drought has impacted agricultural producers in the recent years?
I think climate change is not universally acknowledged in this area. Certainly there's not a lot of mitigation strategies in place that I can see. There's some good work being done on a research basis. The Peace River Forage Association has been at the forefront of that. Locally, mostly it's hope and pray, continue doing what you're doing, and watch the weather forecast 6 times a day, hoping for better results.
And you've been a farmer in the region since 1981. Have you seen conditions like this in the past?
Not extended like this. So occasionally you'll get a dry season. Normally the Peace River usually has been quite damp. The last few years has changed that, of course. It's been warmer here. 2 years ago we had 40 degrees here for 3 or 4 days. Completely unknown. And extended drought, not like this, no.
And how important would you say the role of climate and weather plays in the role that you do and the work of other agriculture producers?
Well, certainly in terms of our long-term thinking, it's completely changing my personal strategy. We're going from an area that was once considered quite wet, and you could rely on the rains, to possibly thinking about how do we farm in an era that this area becomes semi-arid, which would probably mean a change in a lot of production practices, changes in enterprises, and maybe change in products. It's all long-term, and everybody hopes you don't have to do that things will return to normal, but I'm afraid this could be a new normal.
And what do you think needs to be done right now to address some of that challenges that you're facing today?
Probably a mindset shift. There's lots of producers are looking at some of the practices that are encapsulated inside regenerative agriculture, and they're trying to look at water management issues and soil management issues. All that is very long term, requires a lot of deep thinking and a lot of capital. So in terms of instant solutions, there aren't any, because there are some government programs, there are some insurance programs that some people can access, but that's not universal either. The impact, I think, is what I can see is consolidation in the cattle industry, which follows the consolidation in the grain sector. So people going to scale, and a lot of people exiting the business.
How have you changed the way you farm in the face of these drought conditions and challenges?
I haven't changed fast enough, obviously. I've been thinking about diversity in terms of products and in terms of enterprises. We're working on that. We've started out doing some berry things up in this country. There's a few of us are doing that and trying to do more direct-to-consumer work, trying to take some of the middle out of the business of agriculture. It's very difficult when you're a long way from major metropolitan centers, but there is lots of work going on that way. That will take time to reach fruition.
And lastly, Bill, how can British Columbians help your line of work and other agricultural producers?
Well, they can send me orders for my blackcurrant jam, and they can send me orders for sides of beef if they would like. We'll see what we can do. Supporting local products in the marketplace, supporting producers who are trying hard to give you a nutritious product, staying out of the center aisles of your local supermarket, if I may say so. All a little bit helps.
Thank you so much for your time, Bill.
Thank you, Cecilia, for the opportunity.
That was Bill Smith from Dawson Creek on the ongoing impacts of severe drought conditions in the province. From the land to the sea, the impacts of global warming are far-reaching. For years, scientists have warned about the impact of rising temperatures and other environmental factors on our oceans. For more, I'm joined in studio by Karen Riston, Executive Director of Living Ocean Society. Welcome, Karen. Thank you for joining. Karen, let's get right into it. What is the biggest challenge our oceans are facing right now?
Well, do you know, there are so many challenges, it's difficult to quantify which is the largest. Overfishing, ocean warming, ocean acidification, all big issues. But the one that really worries me the most is the one I know the least about, this new push to make a blue economy. I have no idea what's coming at us next.
And how has the climate been impacting our Pacific Ocean ecosystem, specifically here on the Pacific coast?
We've seen a lot of warming events on the Pacific coast, and when the water's warm, you get explosive outbursts of outgrowths of marine algae, and on our salmon farms, explosive outgrowths of sea lice as well, that can damage young juvenile salmon. So those are the overt impacts that you see, but there's also beneath the surface we see shifts in the populations of marine creatures. So some fish coming north because the water's warm enough for them now.
And can you tell us some of the work that Living Oceans has done in this space?
In the climate space, we've worked on both of the pipeline applications, trying to bring information to the National Energy Board, as it then was, about the risks posed to the ocean by tankers the possibility of pollution, the noise pollution, that sort of thing.
I know we talked about earlier, it took you more than 20 years just to see how we are today. What do you think the government should be doing more today to help with this?
We need to keep raising the carbon price. We need to insist that the carbon price applies across the country. And we need to really invest in renewable energy in a way that we've never seen investment since probably the Second World War.
Oh, wow. Okay. And is there anything that the average British Columbian can be doing to help this cause and support your work with Living Oceans?
Certainly. Look at your own greenhouse gas footprint and minimize it to the extent you can. There are other things too, though, other threats to the ocean that everybody can help with. Pollution. Watch what you put down the drain. It's going into the ocean eventually. Plastics, don't let them get out of your control. Make sure they get into the recycling stream. These are important, even if small steps that if everybody takes, we'll have a cleaner ocean.
In addition to that carbon tax that you think the government should insist on, what action do you think they can take today to help with the ocean's ecosystem?
They could provide more funding for the cleanup of the ocean from the various onslaughts that we have. They could work very hard at the international level to control the pollution that comes from ships.
And lastly, I just want to ask, how can people help to donate to your cause?
Oh, well, they could go to www.livingoceans.org and donate to the cause or volunteer to help us with some of our plastic cleanup work.
What kind of volunteer work are you looking for?
We take volunteers every year up to the northwest coast of Vancouver Island to remove plastic marine debris that can harm marine wildlife.
All right, thank you, Karen. That was Karen Riston, Executive Director of Living Oceans Society. This World Environment Day, what are your thoughts on global warming and its impacts? What measures would you like to see protect BC against rising temperatures, drought, and wildfires? Email us at vancouver@citynews.ca. And if you'd like to find out more on what others are doing this World Environment Day, you can look up the hashtag Generation Restoration. Stay tuned as we bring you more of today's headlines.